Hello and welcome to this video for today. Whether you're here for the first time or you're returning, hope you will enjoy. Hey there guys, how's it going today? Hope it is going well. And in today's video, in case you didn't know by clicking the icon thumbnail or seeing the description or seeing the image on the screen, we're talking about the EDH ban list today. Yeah, so I know a few people have done these sorts of videos before, but I want to get my thoughts out there because somewhat recently we did a video about Hull Breacher being banned in EDH, and it got me to thinking about the ban lists and whatnot. So I wanted to talk about it here today. Now, overall, like, for the most part, I agree with the ban list, at least in principle and in theory, and with what a lot of the philosophy that they try to put into the ban list and some of the reasons why some of the cards are banned. But, to me, it's one of those things that it could always be, theoretically better to a degree as well. Or, it depends on what your definition of better is, I guess, to a certain point. Because if I was to say the format would be better because of this, then somebody else might say, well, actually, I don't think the format would be better off with this being banned or whatever. So it's one of those things that it is somewhat not perspective based, but it is perspective based for the most part. So it's one of those things that is subjective to some people. What is banned and what is ban worthy and whatnot. A lot of the cards that are on the ban list, like some of the most powerful cards, like the Moxen and whatnot, Black Lotus, those cards I just think absolutely deserve to be banned because they, like the Moxen, again, they're on the reserve list. They're never going to be, well, they say they're never going to be reprinted, but who knows, but still they say they're never going to be reprinted, so it's very unlikely that they're going to be reprinted. Same with Black Lotus. It's a Power 9 card, so are the Moxen. So it's just one of those things. And I agree with the whole, if it's banned as a 99 card or whatever, it has to be banned as a commander because it leads to too many confusions and whatnot with somebody saying, oh, but it's legal in the 99 or whatever. Especially with cards like maybe Grizzlebrand or Iona or whatever, some cards like that, if you can tutor them. I know that inherently this is one of the things that you've got to accept with the format, that the format is inherently broken. But I think, having the game be able to be accessible to all, and this is where I kind of find the issue is they say that they don't ban for CDH or whatever. But I think that in a way that is good, but in a way it is also bad. And let me explain that just for a second before I get too far into anything else. But the thing is, I do think that, again, I've sort of said this maybe once or twice here or there, that regular EDH, and CEDH need to be completely separate things and need to have completely separate ban lists. Now, will that work? Maybe not. And sometimes if you say to somebody, well, if 98 or 97 or whatever percent of the cards, if there's only 1% difference from like the regular EDH ban list, like maybe one or two cards, let's say, to the CDH ban list, then what's the real difference? So I get that perspective, but I don't know. It's just one of those things. It would be a lot easier if there was a CDH ban list, in my opinion, and a regular EDH ban list, because for the most people who are playing casual Magic, or, not CDH, even though, yes, again, there are combos and whatnot happen, not most people that are playing casual Magic do a lot of that stuff, do a lot of tutoring and whatnot. They're trying to build around their favorite cards. They're trying to build around the flavor of whatever they're doing, and whatnot. So it's always cool to have that finisher to say, hey, look, I've won the game and I can kill everyone, or whatever. But, that's fine. But again, it's one of those things that I think everyone, and including me, is always a bit miffed when the combo happens before turn 5, because on those first turns, I've said this a few times as well, where you're just sort of getting into the game. Everyone's just like playing a land, playing a mana rock, playing a mana dork or whatever, just maybe playing something, not really that relevant, playing some of their setup cards or whatever. Just nothing's going on. And that's why, like I'll say this in another video, that in those early turns that you can't really take any time to, not pay attention to the game or whatever, because, or to a degree, because nothing's happening. You're going to have your turn in 5 seconds, Really, somebody's going to play a land and say go, If you're sitting there talking to your friend thinking, oh, yeah, he's going to have a 5-minute turn, that's not going to happen in those first few turns of the game. You should be focused on what's happening, again. But anyway, in those first few turns of the game, that's when everyone's just middling around, not really doing much, just sort of hoping to hit their land drops and whatnot, and hoping that they can run out something, that can set up for them, or hopefully get their commander out or whatever. That's all they're doing. All they're doing is either ramping or hopefully trying to get something to get their commander out, or hopefully hit their land drops. That's it. They're not really going, okay, here's my win. That's it. The game's over. That's the different philosophy between it all. It's like, I'm just setting up, I'm just doing whatever, or maybe I have, even if you have a really good start in regular Commander, it's just like, oh yeah, he has Soul Ring, yeah, and he's way ahead of everyone, but still, it's like, he's still really setting up. He's not actually saying, oh, okay, I just win. That's the difference. The difference is, that person could be stopped or could be slowed down or might not win or whatever from that position, because, they don't have an insta-win combo or whatever, just like on that first turn or whatever, on those first couple turns. And again, the philosophy is different or whatever, or at least the number of cards or whatever is different to a lot of people to say, well, I need this one other card and I don't have enough tutors or whatever to get it or whatever, or I don't have the money to get enough tutors to put in the deck to, make it that optimal. So, of course, it just sort of runs a little slower, or it runs like this where, again, people have that opportunity. But again, we'll get back to what we're actually talking about. But anyway, that's what I mean by the difference. Like, the difference is in CDH, most of the time, people just say, oh, look, here's my win, can somebody stop me? Whereas in regular EDH, everyone's just in those first few turns, like, trying to do something, trying to hit their lands, whatever. And, if you're banning something in regular EDH, it's because it's too broken, it's too abusable, it gets built around too easily for everyone just to sort of abuse, or it leads to games that just mean that, the game stalls out and it lasts for a, very long time. That's the opposite end of the spectrum to what I was just saying earlier, which is, I don't know whether you call that like really like janky to a degree because it's funny sometimes or whatever when you think about it, because when you think about jank or whatnot, or the lowest power of sort of Commander, those games go a very long time. And sometimes games do go longer, but that's because somebody, slows the game down in one variant or another. But again, for the most part, games still do end fairly quickly for the most part. And a lot of the time, my focus is on trying to make the game as fun for everyone as possible. And the philosophy behind the ban list is to make, you know, suggestions or rulings on certain cards to say, we don't want this in the format because it makes the environment of EDH with the, 25, 30-year history of cards interacting in the ways that they do unfun for most people. You know, again, this is the sort of argument that I think I sort of had where if you were to invite your 12-year-old, brother or whatever into it, or your 80-year-old grandmother into it, and then sit them down and actually play against your deck when you're playing your, turn 1, turn 0, whatever combo deck, or you're playing a stacks, lockout deck where no one can play the game after a certain point. It's like, would you actually do that to somebody that you actually, really like, or, you love or whatnot, things like this? I don't think a lot of people would, but yet they do that to their quote unquote friends or whatever. So I don't get that. But again, that's the sort of thing that I'm talking about. You can't predict for people. Some people will go, well, I don't care about the ban list and whatnot. So I want to play with the cards that I want to play with, and or the cards that I've got or whatever. These are the cards that I've got. I've opened them in the pack. I want to play with them. And again, I think, when you start saying EDH is casual magic or whatever, for the most part, yes, but there is still a structured format to it, and I like that it has that. I don't really like the whole unstructured environment of just like whatever people call kitchen table magic, where it's just like anything basically goes. It doesn't really matter. There's no real like ban list. There's no real regulations because it's not a tournament. It's not official. It's just friends going, okay, I'm going to put together a deck and play it. And every week or every fortnight or every month or whatever, we're going to get together and we're going to have a few games. Now, that's fine and dandy and whatnot. And if you're into that, you can do it. But again, I don't like that whole, like, there are no rules or whatever, because it just leads to people, like, going, okay, I can run, 4 Soul Rings. Oh, wait, there are no rules to say that I can't run more than 4 Soul Rings, so I just run, 60 Soul Rings or whatever. Like, that's the point at which it starts becoming, like, to me, silly or whatever. I can, look, there's no rules to say that I can't run 60 Mana Crypts. Like, that's the world that it kind of leads to. It just kind of leads to being like, there's, we've agreed to saying there's no rules or whatever, basically, for the most part, so anything goes, so I can just run 60 Mana Crypts or whatever, like, it'll cost me, the down payment of a house or whatever, but again, you could do that. I mean, how do your deck actually win or whatnot, I don't know, but still, you've got all of this stuff, so that, surely you can find ways to win. And maybe you take out like 5 Mana Crypts or whatever and say, oh, here's my tinker into this or whatever, and I win, ta-da, like, so, yeah, so I don't like when formats don't or whatever, it's not even a format at that point, I guess, but still, I don't like it when you come into a game and there's no rules or there's no, like, set expectations of, like, this is how the game will play or whatnot. There's a lot of cards that are also on the ban list, like Chaos Orb and whatnot, that are just like, you can't make those cards legal because they're just like really ridiculous cards. There's also other cards like Caracas that you just sort of can't make legal because, again, everyone has their legendary, so, just like it doesn't make, sense. Like I said, with the recent banning, Hull Breacher, I don't understand why some of the other cards weren't banned that are very similar to Hull Breacher. They've been in the format for a very long time. Hull Breacher just sort of pushed the envelope and seemed to make it a critical mass. I understand why they said some of the reasons why, in theory, like the Planeswalker one can be attacked. Yeah, sure, that is a thing. So, and the other one's 2 colors. So yeah, that's true. But it's not much more difficult really to run any of those cards rather. Yeah. So I don't know. There's some cards that you just go, I don't understand why this is a banned card though. There's some cards that you go, Biorhythm, it seems fine. Like, it's not any worse or any better or anything than any other card that's a lot of mana that basically says I win the game for the most part. Like, you board wipe and then you say, okay, everyone's life total is equal to the number of creatures you have. Oh, look, you have no creatures, you're dead. Wow, how did that happen? Coalition victory, same sort of thing. It takes so much setup to actually get this thing to go off and to say, hey, I win the game or whatever. I understand why sometimes it's not the most fun card to play, but in a 5-color deck, you've got to have all of these different things set up on the board, and people can see it coming from a mile away. So I just think it was banned in a time that it was, perhaps thought of a lot worse, and Magic has changed a lot since it was banned. So I just don't think it really matters that much. Like fast bond cards like that, yeah, absolutely get that out of here, because or channel or whatnot. Those cards, you cannot let those cards, see play, because they're way too powerful. Again, that's maybe a meta call, and to say, well, maybe they should be allowed in CDH. I don't know. I think they're too good to a degree, or they would warp the format. Same with the Moxen. They would warp the format and make, or they'd change the meta so much that so many other cards would be, phased out of being played or whatnot, and it would make the games even shorter and more expensive, to get into, and all of this stuff. I understand it's an established, high-end player base for the most part, but again, it just sort of like, it sort of hurts to be like, why it is. Like Lutri, I understand again why that's banned, but I think they should make a ruling on it to say it's because it is banned as a companion. Perhaps you could say again, this is whole banned as banned in the 99, or banned as whatever part of the deck or whatever. So again, you could make that argument that it's not that bad of a card as the commander or in the 99. So, but if you say it's legal, then people will go, oh, I can just put it in my companion zone. So it just, you can't find a solution to it. So it just gives those 2 specific colors a free 101st card. That doesn't matter how good that card is. They've now got access to 1 more card. So it really warps the game, so there's a lot of cards that, I think, and I'm not going to go through all of these cards, I'm just talking more in general, and whatnot. Like, there's certain cards like Yawgmoth's Bargain. I don't get why that's banned. I don't get why it's banned. I do get why it's banned, but in a sense, I don't get why it's banned, really. It's 6 or 7 mana. Yeah, sure. Especially in Command, again, that's why Grizzlebrand's sort of banned. You can pay so much life to get so many cards. It's so easy to utilize. But, Phyrex, no, not Phyrex in Arena, whatever the other one is. The triple black pips one, I can't think of it right now. Yeah, Necropotence. I don't know why I couldn't think of Necropotence. But yeah, like Necropotence is way more powerful than that. Yes, I know it's triple black mana, but that just doesn't matter for the most part. Like, it's a much more powerful effect. It's 3 mana, and then you pay the life. Like you just draw most of your deck for the most part. Like, and that's probably the right thing to do. If you've got enough mana to do anything with, you're just going to find your win condition that easily. That sparing a few extra black mana for, making sure you've just got enough black mana to play it, is a small hurdle. Yes, sure, it is a hurdle, but it's still a fairly small hurdle. Yes, sure, it's harder to put in 5 color decks or 4 color decks maybe, but a lot of decks do make that work. And even so, even saying, oh well, it is very hard to make it work, they still do. And that hoop to get around, eventually they do get around it, and then they've got one of the probably the most busted enchantments in Magic, and just like win the game from there very easily. So, again, I don't get why some cards are on the list, because I think they're just fine. I think sometimes, yes, I think Prime Time, should be banned, because even though it's very good, and I think it would be cool in a sense, it's just I get why it's banned. I get 100% why it's banned, because it just leads to games becoming everything about it. But then again, you could say that about so many cards again that exist in the format. Like Sol Ring as well. And I'm going to put this out soon. But again, you could say things about various different cards that warp the game around them. So, there's just so many arguments to say that there are much worse cards than some of these other cards that are on there, like Coalition Victory and whatnot. So, like, again, I find that the Rules Committee, they try to do a good job of policing it, and the advisory group tries to do a good job of bringing things up. Sometimes I think there is a little bit of, like, I don't know, what you would call it. Like, they don't go far enough. Like, sometimes they have this set out of like things they look for, or exemplary things that they say qualify something for being banned. And a lot of the things, are the worst things, like, you know, obscuring like gameplay and whatnot, things like that, or imbalance of, resources and whatnot, things like this. So I agree with some of the bans, absolutely, but some of the bans just have not come. And I get again that they don't want to have a ban list of hundreds and hundreds of cards, but they really need to ban several other things that are in the format. That, or you again need to say, okay, well, we can't police the entire format. We can only police regular EDH or whatever. So let's stop policing CDH and let somebody else police CDH or whatever. We'll make a separate group specifically to police CDH. Whatever. Like, something has to give on one side or the other somewhere, because I don't think the two formats can coexist, really. I really don't. That's the thing. Like, in regular EDH, a lot of these cards are absolutely fine, especially like Coalition Victory. It would not even see play in CDH. It would not do anything. Like, cards like that would be an absolute joke. But if you flip flopped it, basically, like, sure, like, some of the Moxen would be played in regular Commander, but how much work would they actually do? Like, it without 30 or 40 tutors to get to them or whatever and things like this, without all the protection and whatnot that goes into them, they're just another mana rock. Yeah, sure, they're a 0 mana rock, but there's just a mana rock. That's it. Yeah, it sits there and it taps for mana. If you draw it late game, it basically does nothing for you. It's just another land essentially, but it's an artifact, I guess. So it's just one of those things. If you draw it early, it's really good, but it only does so much, and then eventually it will get blown up or whatever. So if you look at it in the inverse fashion, like I'm saying, how impactful would these cards be in CDH? Well, of course they'd be very impactful in CDH, but if you look at it from the other perspective and say, well, how impactful would this be to regular EDH? Probably not very, because again, people would just run it and just like, oh yeah, I got my Moxen on turn 3 maybe or whatever. Let's say that's the average that you can do it. Sometimes you'll get it really early, like turn 1 or whatever. And you can go, again, you can have the dream turn of going, Mox into Soul Ring, into Mana, into a Signet or whatever, and then play your land or something else. So, then you've got 2 more mana for something else or whatever. But again, that's not going to happen a lot and not often, again, and sort of thinking about like going from like in CDH, that would just mean that somebody then casts something and wins the game. Again, in regular EDH, you look at it from the other side of the fence. It's like, yeah, that person is way ahead, but what does it actually achieve for them more so, I guess, is like the question, I guess. You look at it and you go, yeah, that was really good, but how many more cards have they got in hand? 2 or 3 or whatever. How many of those cards are they actually going to play? Maybe they'll play their commander. Maybe they'll play another land. Maybe the rest of their hand is lands. How actually impactful is it? Might not be that impactful. Might not be that bad. It's bad now, and it's bad not knowing, but then they just go land for 6 turns and you go, oh, okay, well, we had nothing to worry about, really. They played their commander and then that's all they had. All they've had is lands for the rest of the game. Whatever. But yes, of course, you can have those people who just, get really far ahead and have really good stuff again. But again, it will be less impactful in regular EDH. In CDH, it will absolutely warp the format. And the opposite again, I'll go to the Coalition Victory. Again, in regular EDH, maybe it won't do very much. In CDH, it will do literally nothing. Literally nothing at all. And they won't even look at it for 5 seconds. They'll go, oh, okay. Who doesn't do anything. So, or even if it does do something, I'll play a negate or something, or whatever. Fierce Guardianship it, if I really need to. Okay, next. And in regular EDH, it only fits in one very specific style of deck, and even then it's like you've got to have all of this set up and you've got to have all of this mana, and again, you've got to, and biorhythm, same thing, you've got to have all of this set up for the most part and be like, okay, now nobody has a creature or whatever, or they only have 1 creature or whatever, so their life total will become 1 or whatever, and then I can, kill them this way or whatever. There's a lot of setup to do, and then it's not even 100% guaranteed. Some of those cards are absolutely fine and wouldn't hurt the formats at all. But when you look at some of the other cards, if you think about them in one format or the other, this is why if you think about them you have to think about them in both formats. It suddenly becomes well, we can't do it because therefore it will affect this other side of the format that we don't want to have to worry about too much, or we don't want to have to, have some people being like, well, I need a Moxen to play the format, right? No, you don't, because it, again, a lot of people don't buy Mana Crypts, Mana Vaults and whatnot, some of these other cards that they just can't afford because, well, I can't afford it. Therefore, even if it's really good or whatever, I'm just not going to worry about it, or most people don't even know about them. They just go, oh, what's that? Mana Vault, never heard of it. Or Mana Crypt, never heard of it. Oh, Sol yeah, I've heard of that, but these other cards, almost never heard of them. What does that do? Oh, okay, that sounds bad. I wouldn't play that, or whatever. Most people are like that. They go, oh, I'm not losing 3 life, or whatever. Get out of here. But again, yeah, there are certainly cards that are on the list that I think don't belong there. Again, I'm not going through them all. I'm not going to go through every card that's in EDH as well and go, is this fine for EDH? Most cards are, again, it's just there's some cards that, yes, absolutely, there are bad interactions and bad parts to them and whatnot. I understand that they want diversity and whatnot in Commander, and they want people to be able to play basically whatever they want. But again, it's one of those things where it's like, well, and going back to one of my earliest points was, you've got to accept that the format is a broken format and there's no fixing it. So it's like, well, one of those things, it's very hard to police a format like this. So I get that, but yet I still get the point of what you're saying, but yet you haven't done it. You haven't done what you set out to do. You say these, all the things that you say on their page and whatnot about what they look for and whatnot. And I understand they say, oh, well, we banned some of these cards, but we kept some of them legal because we couldn't be bothered or whatever. We didn't want a 1,000-page ban list or whatever, or different things like this. They're meant to be a signpost of archetypes or signpost of cards that we don't want in the format, whatnot, things like this. But again, that doesn't work. You actually just need to ban the cards that you actually think, nah, that just shouldn't be in the format. Even if we think, oh yeah, maybe, it's okay. No, it's just not, again, if you want the meta to be a certain way or whatever, even though I don't say that, regular EDH is a meta, even so it is still a meta of some sort, because people do play cards and there is an agreed upon, level of power, and there's a level of synergy that goes in, and then you're obviously playing certain cards to power up those archetypes or whatnot. So there's obviously a meta of some sort, even though it's people will play what they want, more so over what is pushed down their throat by somebody who's running a CDH channel to say these are the cards that you need to run. No, that's if you're playing CDH. If you're just playing regular EDH, you don't need to worry about those cards. You play what you want to play. If you say, okay, yeah, sure, I actually want to sit down and, build a CDH deck. I want to have one CDH deck so that I can play CDH sometimes or whatever. That's perfectly fine. Whatever. Again, I'm not against any of that. I'm just saying that if anyone's telling you the way that you should play or whatever, or the cards that you actually definitely need to play because otherwise you're playing it wrong. Suggestions are different. That's what I do on this channel as well, is I put in suggestions and I say, is this card a good card or a bad card? When I said Temple of False God, not very good card, or whatever. If I say this card's a good card or that card's a bad card, this is why. It's my personal opinion of it and saying, well, where can it fit or whatnot? Different things like that. I give suggestions. I'm not saying you have to run it. I'm saying it's probably good in these archetypes or whatever. And otherwise, there might be some fringe applications. But again, for the most part, you want it in those decks. But again, it's up to somebody to go, oh, okay, I actually think I agree with that or whatnot. So I'll try it in this deck because that's the sort of deck, this is. And they just find, no, either, no, it's not really that good of a card for what I want, actually, but it was nice to try it. and it actually did work with what I was doing, but it's just not quite what I was looking for. And then there'll be some people who'll try it and go, oh yeah, it was actually a really good card. I'm really happy with it, and that was a really great, recommendation. That's completely different. Like there are, again, I'm not saying this for all of them, but there are some that are out there that push, their agenda, and I try to push an agenda, I guess, but again, I just try to push the agenda for everyone to be able to play what they want to play. If you want to play what you want to play, I don't want to, if I don't want to play against it, that's my decision. That's the way that I personally am. I just do not want to play against these style of decks because that's not fun for me. That's not interesting for me. That's not the games that I am looking for. That is it. And you can't tell me my favorite flavor of ice cream. Okay, that's it. Like I can't tell you your favorite flavor of ice cream. That this is how it works. Okay, we're all individuals who have different taste buds and whatnot. So we all like different things. So and that's fine. So again, I just try to say, well, again, if you think about the huge amount of players, the huge diversity of people that are in this format, and even those that are playing much more casual games at home, or on Discords or on webcams with their friends and whatnot, because that's now the only way that they can get games, because of, lockdowns and whatnot, most of these people never set foot to play in stores again. So, I set foot into stores to play because I, like the social interaction. I like, talking with people. I like, everything that goes on at the table because, or at least in the more casual games and whatnot, because it's fun. You get to interact with these people and, tell a story through your deck and whatnot, or whatever. So that's what's fun and interesting to me, whatever. But, again, if anyone thinks that you need these cards or whatever to play, then that becomes like, no, you don't. Like, I don't tell people they need to play Avenger of Zend, or they need an Avenger of Zendikar. Like, they don't. Like, if Avenger of Zendikar is a good card in their deck, then I might say, oh, you might want to think about it. But I don't say to them, you need it. That's the difference. Like, in the higher power, you actually actively need a lot of these cards because the format is built in that way where it's like, no, you cannot get into this format properly without a lot of these cards, because, or at least the ability to find a group that's okay with you proxying those cards, because yeah, the format is completely different. You absolutely need fetch lands. You absolutely need to find as many untapped duels as you can. You need to have, the perfect mana base for whatever deck you're building, and whatnot. You need all the, mana ramp that you can, stuff in there that's, effective and cheap and low to the ground or whatnot, at least in mana cost. Not in dollars wise, but again, that's what you need. You need all of these different things. You need your specific cards for that deck, or for those decks and for that format. For regular Commander, you don't. You just need whatever cards you can find that you think are cool and you want to jam in some sleeves and play with. And again, somebody might say, oh, if you want to upgrade that deck eventually, hey, these are some cards to consider. That's completely different. So anyway, I'm not going to talk about that too much, but again, I've been just talking about the EDH ban list and what I think in general about it, and some of the cards in a glossary sense and whatnot. I don't want to talk too deeply about the whole list and whatnot, because I think that it's been discussed ad nauseum to a degree. And like what I'm saying isn't too different again to what some other people are saying in a degree, but I'm not going as deep into it again. But again, this is what I've been talking about for today. So, let me know what you think about, the ban list. You can get as specific or unspecific as you like. Don't really mind. Write it all down there in the comments below. If you would like to further support the channel, you can go onto our Patreon. You can also get social with us on our Facebook. To follow all the updates, make sure you hit the like button. And on our Discord, to get into it, please leave a comment and I'll send you an invite. All links are in the description. I hope you have enjoyed this video here today, and if you have, please consider liking, sharing and subscribing, and I hope you will come back for another one. See you then.